Hello and most welcome to 2045 of the series. We are currently on page 376 and by Tom McClelland, AI and Affordances for Mental Action. I'm going to put the preview here. Dr. Tom McClelland. Last time, which was 2042, we start speaking about how covert attention has been found to precede involuntary eye movements. So attention is causing or is corporal movement. So attention is something that we do. We can do attention in different ways, and it will affect what happens, what comes to the fore. What comes to the fore? What is the active ingredient? What attention literally is? What it starts to develop, our way of attending things, is very important. We mentioned that earlier in the connection with how tongue, where proprioception has no content. Importantly so. It having no content makes it possible to harbor anything, everything. That is only made possible by it having the zero position. The zero position. If it is not zero, it cannot harbor anything. It will be unable to enter into the exogenous if it's already filled. I'd say that already filled, now also paralleling what we checked in Ian McGilchrist, the matter of things, the matter with things, in the previous lecture, 2044. Grasping ahead and retrospectively saying that thinking is only words is the same as not having proprioception empty. It will not be, excuse my pun, will not be proprioception proper. It'll be lacking. Not able to afford as much, as clearly shown by the McGilchrist, and also how Tom McClelland goes into that to show that we need to open up to have an active, expanded attention that can harbor much more encompassing and allowing. And on page 376, at the very end, what we read, interestingly, the neural realization of an imagined bodily act overlaps extensively with the neural realization of actually performing that act. Actually performing that act. And I will now continue on page 376. 376. Consider a situation in which someone is sitting opposite you at a table and you wish to know how the items on the table are arranged. Are arranged. From that perspective, for instance, from that perspective, is the fork to the right of the plate or the left? To work this out, you could rotate your body round to the other agent's position and observe how the items appear from this new position. A more economical alternative, however, is to perform such self-rotation mentally and see how those items appear without having to move a muscle. To move a muscle. Psychologists such as Kessler and Thompson have provided experimental evidence that when we adopt another agent's spatial perspective, we perform exactly this kind of mental self-rotation. Mental self-rotation. The situation described thus presents an opportunity for mental self-rotation. The situation described thus presents an opportunity for mental self-rotation. Do we perceive this opportunity to perform the relevant mental act or only infer it? The existing data does not offer a definite answer to this question. This question. Anecdotally, though, it does not seem that we first perceive our situation and then infer that mental self rotation would reveal the desired information about the other agent's perspective. Perspective! Perspective! Rather, the availability of this mental act is immediately apparent to us. It is perceived, not inferred. Not inferred! If this line of thought is sound, then the notion of affordances to perform offline bodily activities could be of theoretical value in psychology. Again, though, there could also be interesting applications in AI. In AI, many artificial agents exploit offline rehearsal physical actions, of physical actions, of physical actions. Programming agents to be responsive to affordances to perform such rehearsal, such rehearsals could yield the same kind of cognitive advantage achieved by agents that are responsive to affordances to perform overt bodily actions. My final proposed mental affordances are affordance to count. Counting is a mental act. Sometimes we count in a way that involves a bodily act of pointing to items and numbering them out loud. Numbering them out loud. Sometimes we count in a way that involves doing those bodily acts offline by pointing and numbering in our heads. In our heads. It is implausible, however, that the act of counting is exhausted by such overt or covert bodily action. Covert or overt bodily action. We can count things without performing either of these acts, and we have a brain area, the intraparietal sulcus, that is directly associated with arithmetic without being directly implicated in those bodily acts. Bodily acts. My target here is what you might call unassisted counting, a way of counting that depends on neither overt nor covert bodily action. Our environment can present opportunities for counting. Consider a pile of pennies or leaves on a clover, or the cards remaining in a poker deck. A strong consideration in favor of affordances for counting comes from pathological cases. To appreciate this evidence, we must first consider how pathological cases have informed our understanding of affordances for bodily action. For bodily action. Utilization behavior is a disorder caused by specific brain damage to the frontal lobe and is characterized by subjects being compelled to utilize any items that they see. Utilize any items that they see. When presented with an apple, subjects eat it even when they are not hungry. When they are presented with a toothbrush, they use it to brush their teeth regardless of the context. When they are presented with pens, they draw them even if there is no paper to draw on. No paper to draw on. To draw on. This disorder has been explained with reference to affordance perception. Subjects perceive an opportunity to act, but are unable to suppress the impulse to exploit this opportunity. This very opportunity. Where a typical subject perceives that the apple affords eating, there is evidence that the motor pathways responsible for grabbing and eating the apple are triggered. Are triggered. If the agent elects to eat the apple, these motor signals result in the bodily action, but more often the agent will suppress this signal. They perceive the opportunity to eat, but do not act on it. But do not act on it. However, due to the frontal lobe damage, agents suffering from utilization behavior are unable to suppress these signals to perform whatever act they perceive to be afforded. Parallel claims have been made in the context of OCD. The compulsive behavior of sufferers of OCD can be described in terms of the distinctive ways in which they perceive and act on environmental affordances for bodily action. I'll put a stop here. That was 2045. This last bit we previously went through with, or can be checked also in Benjamin K. Bergen's Louder Than Words book, highly recommendable. Words are motor action. If you think or say cycle, the neurons in the motor cortex for cycling will be activated to a lesser degree. So there's No absolute borders between, you could call execution, going the whole way, or simply thinking, not going the whole way. This is what Alexander calls inhibit, but we need to be able to inhibit thoughts as well. They will take energy. So motoric thinking is already something of an understanding within neurology. So how you think, your attitude, as we mentioned before, doesn't maybe not have to be completely contentless, but it needs to be emptied out or inhibited to a certain degree. The inhibitory function needs to be practiced. I think that is also called within psychology for self-regulation. I think it's too broad and clumsy term. Go back to 376. Counting is a mental act. Well, you do the counting, you should check Lakoff Johnson, Philosophy in the Flesh, Expressions We Live By, and also together with Nunez, Lakoff wrote about mathematics, how it stems from action, being in the world, and doing metaphorical thinking. Metaphorical thinking is a sort of iteration, if we're going to compare with fractality. One compass, one compass. One compass and come to different realization. So counting is acted on, but the less corporal we make it, the less activated it is constantly. And we will be more able to stir in the direction of regulating it, directing it, being the master of our actions. In the example, which is very good, of OCD, the sufferers of OCD cannot stop their compulsive behavior. They act directly, almost like a drinker, and quite easily comparable to the left hemisphere. It acts directly. Since representations are the only things it can model about, it doesn't have the capacity to enter into the reality of ladder-like, or I would say stair-like relations, where there is not 0 and 1, but there is a descending and ascending in a not discrete way. I don't think stairs maybe is the best example here, but it's on a scale. It's not clear either or. And you will be able, and you should be able, once you manage it better, to fully be your master over where you put your intention on the scale. Is it going to be less of a bodily act and more of a covert, you could call thinking, or should it be overtly done? It is like playing on a violin. And I think this to be a rather short one. So thank you very much. Have a pleasant morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.